Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Oxford Insights podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mikey Wastie of Autofarm, one of the longest standing independent Porsche specialists in the UK, actually founded over 50 years ago in 1973. So, we're going to talk about a motorsport rooted brand, a management buyout, balancing servicing with specialist projects, and a somewhat measured view of the future development of Porsche as a brand. And so we're looking about protecting a specialist brand's heritage while still evolving the business underneath it. Mikey, welcome. Really pleased you could join us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, look, before we get into the details of the business as it is, to bring it up to date, tell us a bit how you got into the business in the first place. What made you want to work there? Because I think you've been there a long time, and about your introduction to Autofarm.
Yeah, so essentially, I started doing an engineering course and was always been happy doing things with my hands. And the career path that I was taking at that time was looking at manufacturing, machining, electrical engineering, and certain aspects of the course that I was doing involved automotive. And at that particular time, all the lecturers said that when you're doing something automotive, you just bring another little edge to what you're doing. So I was trying to stay out of the motorsport sector and the automotive industry, but my passion was drawing me into it. I wanted to kind of keep it as a hobby. So I started looking for work experience placements, and one of the lecturers actually knew another lecturer that used to work there, and he was actually working at Autofarm. So he got me an interview, and that's where it started. I started as an apprentice at Autofarm. Not really passionate about Porsche at that particular point in my life. I just enjoyed anything automotive. So that was really my first dealing with Autofarm.
Excellent. And you're born and bred in the Oxfordshire area?
Yeah, Oxford. Yeah, born and bred in Oxford. Family around here,
Yeah.
and we've sort of settled down here because it's Motorsport Valley, and
Right.
it's dense with automotive. So
Excellent. Okay. So look, once you became an apprentice, you didn't just stay in one part of the business. I think you went through learning various parts of the business. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, I went through a phase of, at that age you're learning lots. So, they were keen to move me around between the servicing department, over into the engine room, gearbox room, special projects division where we were doing restorations on, very rare cars at that particular point. I probably didn't realise how rare some of the cars that I was having restored at the time were. And equally at certain times when the business needed it, it would then move me into, the parts background, or move me into a servicing area. So I got to learn quite a lot about the business in those roles.
Excellent. Did you have a clear favourite in those early days? Where, if you could choose, where would you have spent most time?
I would say doing the hands-on stuff is where I was more passionate.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And at what point did you sort of realise that this might become more than just a job? That it was actually, there was a bit more to this, and that you were sort of it became a bit of a life ambition sort of thing to develop and run this company.
Do you know, I had no idea that I'd once be running this business.
Right.
Worked in it for a long period of time. I was very fortunate to have some really good people around me. Autofarm had got very established staff, been there a long time. Lots of them had good backgrounds in motorsport and other heavy engineering.
Right.
So I was able to learn so much from the people that were already here, and 2 or 3 of them are still here now.
Right.
So I think because people, I think at that stage I saw that there was people here that were passionate, and because they were passionate, they were really good at what they did, and that kind of, I fed off of that because it made me want to do what they were doing, and I wanted, you know, and I found a passion for what I was doing. So it was kind of self-perpetuating.
Excellent. So you came into the business in sort of the late 1990s, but even by then, Autofarm had been established a good 25-ish years, roughly. So tell us little bit about the background of Autofarm. It was founded by Josh Sadler. Tell us a little bit about the heritage of Autofarm.
So Josh started the business in 1973. He had a huge passion for hill climbing, motorsport.
Right.
He was building cars at the time, and repairing them once he'd had a few offs, and just found that the Porsche brand was a really well engineered car. So in terms of, you know, making it perform, it was great, and in terms of repairing it, he said, you know, they were strong, sturdy cars. So
Yeah.
from that, he had other people saying, could you build me a car?
Yeah.
And that's how Autofarm started. So it started out of a hobby and it turned into a business. There weren't many Porsche main dealers in the UK.
Yeah.
You know, Porsche was relatively low key at that point in this country. So they were flying parts in. You know, they were doing a lot of stuff in the UK that nobody else was doing at the time. And that's kind of is how it started. And he got a team of people around him that all shared the same passion.
Yeah. And that must have been so. You were brought into as an apprentice into by then a very well established business with some excellent people around you. How did you sort of move from that sort of enthusiastic apprentice doing different jobs into eventually sort of being involved in management buyout of the business? So tell us a little bit about that story.
It was quite clear. You could see, you know, with Josh's age and I would say the progression forward of the business, the reinvestment of the business had started to sort of slow down, and you could see the business was in standstill, kind of. And a good friend that I'd worked with a few years, for a good number of years actually, we'd worked in two. They were a subcontractor to our business, and that chap is my business partner now, Steve Wood. And Steve and I had worked together, and I needed some help at Autofarm doing some work. Steve came in to work with me, and organically we were just chatting about what we would do if we were to do our own thing, or whether we were to you know, work together. And that's when Josh approached us and said, look, you know, you two work quite well together. You know, could we look at what a management buyout would look like? And it, yeah, unusual because it's not something I thought I'd do. Yeah. But it was a 2-year process of lots of crossing T's and dotting I's, and skeletons that were falling out of the closet because, you know, it's a well-established business. But yeah, quite humbling. I've learned an incredible amount. I would say I've learned more since I've taken over running the business with my business partner Steve than I did in my first part of my career.
Okay, that's interesting. And so, how did that transition? Because you mentioned there was a bit of a transition period. Well, there's a couple of years to get the deal done, but then Josh didn't just walk away, did he? And I could imagine for existing clients and customers, that was quite an important thing. So tell us a little bit about that actual process of taking.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there was a lot to learn from what Josh had done, whether you agree with it or not. When a business is established and running, they've got to where they've got to by doing things. They must have done something right. So for us, it was about keeping the norm to that point. We wanted to keep Josh involved. Josh wanted to stay involved. It was his baby. So he remained a shareholder in the business. I think that gave all three of us a degree of comfort because Josh was the constant, because he knew the business and he would always protect the business. And Steve and I were, you know, we had worked together, but not necessarily at the coalface in anger. And I think having the three at the start always made sure that there was a voice of reason. And that projected across to the staff, and I think it projected across to the customers. So our underlying goal at that point was, even though we were going through a management buyout, we didn't want the customers to realise. And if they hadn't realised what had happened, that was good news. After year 3, it was then about starting to progress and move the business forward, and then it would have been about making some changes. So those first 3 years were a lot of implementation, staff contracts, all of the fundamental underpinnings and foundations that you would put in, just to kind of make sure that you've got a good standing.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and so roughly when did the management buyout happen? Was that about 12, 13 years ago?
Yeah, it was around sort of between 2014 and 2016.
Yeah. And then and when did Josh finally depart the business?
So that would have been three years after that.
Okay.
That probably was one of the toughest points, I think, because we had planned to possibly have him for longer.
Yeah.
But the progression of what we wanted to do with the business,
I
think because he'd done what he'd done for so long, there was certain points where we would clash heads on things. And it probably wasn't a healthy situation. I think if we'd have carried on, we'd have ruined the relationship. So we agreed that we would take the last shares back. He would then retire. And it was the best thing to do because it meant that we could kind of push forward a bit faster and retain that relationship, because he's been such a big part of my life. And respectfully, I was young at one point and I probably made a lot of mistakes, and I probably wasn't the easiest person to deal with. And equally, towards the end, I was able to give him a little bit of slack in the same respect, because it was important that he stayed here and saw it move on.
Okay. And how, going back in your time in the business from when you were an apprentice right up to today, what's the biggest change in the day-to-day type of work? Because you do primarily two types of work. I think it's roughly 50-50 split between sort of like special projects, rebuilds and things and servicing.
Yes.
Has that changed? So tell us a little bit what the business looked like when you joined and how it developed.
I would say the split has always been roughly the same, and the scales constantly move between, it might be sometimes 60-40. Just depends on the workload. Sometimes the market changes and people stop spending money on these special projects, and then the service becomes busier. In terms of the actual physical changes in the business, we've got more staff than we would have had back then. So we're able to cater for more of the servicing requests and requirements because there's that many more Porsches, built in production now.
Yeah.
But we've equally had to, our industries in the automotive sector, in engineering, we're all kind of behind the scenes. So it could have been in a dirty environment. It wasn't really customer facing, where today everybody wants their facility to be completely open. Customer wants to be customer facing. So our workshop looks as good as our office does. So there was a lot of investment in new equipment and building an infrastructure in the business that would carry it forward for the future.
Excellent. And just give us an idea, some of the special projects that you might be doing now or done historically. Are there any particular standout just to give people a flavour of the type of special projects you do?
Yeah, we like getting involved in stuff that's really different. So if I look out in our project bay at the moment, we're finishing off a car that is the last right-hand drive 2.7 RS from 1973.
Wow.
The year the business was formed, which is quite cool. And that's down to every nut and bolt detail that the car would have had from the 70s. Then next to that, we've got what we call like a custom build. So that is somebody's bespoke requirement. So we've taken an early 911 and we're building it to their exact taste, and we're picking components from the 911 generation from late 60s all the way through to the 90s.
Okay.
And then the next one in line next to that is quite a relatively modern car. So we've partnered with someone where we're doing the technical backing and the building for a very bespoke, fully carbon 911. So that's quite cool. So
Excellent.
there's sometimes quite a bit of work that we do that we can't also talk about. So
Yeah,
some clients where we're doing work for and
yeah.
it's kept quiet. So
Okay. And I mean, I'm sure every project is different, but what is a good project? Is it 6 months, a year, or does it just vary between?
most projects are 12 months.
Yeah,
It depends on the scale and scope of the project.
yeah,
So if it's a straightforward restoration when you're disassembling and reassembling with parts that you know are readily available, that's a 12-month window. Anything more than that, where we're scanning, scanning, manufacturing carbon bodywork,
yeah,
making CNC parts, then that obviously is a longer time frame. But
yeah.
yeah, some stuff can be up to 2 years if it's a really big build.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, the 1973 one, every nut and bolt, how long is that?
So that's quite a sore subject, that one.
Oh, okay.
that is that is a 12-month process normally. We did a video series on that car. You'll find it
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
And we never finished the final video because the customer put the car into long-term storage before we did the final shakedown and commission.
Right.
So that's probably been 5 years, that car.
Oh, right.
But
I can imagine.
it's just having its final shakedown. So if you catch the videos on YouTube, they're quite interesting.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Now, I know in terms of coming back to the more routine sort of servicing side, but a lot of people are bringing very valuable vehicles to you for servicing, and you make great use of sort of technician video reports. Tell us a little bit about that, how that works, and why you think that's a good idea.
That absolutely changed our business overnight. We worked very closely with the company that had developed this software, and we used it in anger, and we also helped tailor that sort of software to us. But the industry used to be a phone call or an email with a photograph, and you'd have to take full trust from the person that they had got your car in the workshop, or it did need the component that you were suggesting that it needed. The video element has just brought the customer right up close and personal with the car, but also with the technician. They can hear the passion in their voice. They can hear the confidence that they have when something isn't correct, and it means that people can understand what they're looking at. You don't have to be mechanically minded when someone is pointing out a component and explaining why it needs changing. So it's such a valuable tool for us. The customers love it. They also keep it for records for their, for cars that are having restorations. We've got customers that will store up all of those videos and use it as like a video build diary.
Yeah. Excellent.
That's great.
And does it, on a more routine basis, does it enhance the speed of actually getting feedback from customers, or in terms of more routine servicing work? I mean, I can imagine it works two ways, good for the business as well as keeping them informed.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I mean, it takes that. If you imagine from a technician's perspective, they'd report on a car, they'd then deliver that information to their office personnel, who then have to make contact with the customer. The video that we do directly sends straight to the owner, so they can see it in real time. And then obviously the team in here get the notification, so they can then follow up and say, right, I've seen you've watched the video. Do you want us to carry on and proceed? So it's great for getting things action faster.
Excellent. And okay, I can imagine with a product like yours, you build up a huge amount of customer loyalty over the years. But how much of your sort of business still comes from the existing customer base? I know you're doing some other things like open days. I'd like to hear about those. So tell us a little bit about sort of the marketing strategy. Obviously, you're a well-established business. You're in a clear community of Porsche owners. So tell us a little bit about how you position yourself with your customers and in the community, and about your marketing in general.
I mean, I'm a big believer of looking after the clients you've already got, because you don't have to put out newsletters for those people. They're already there. So really important to look after them and also keep that database current. Equally, reaffirming with them that you're still here is key. That's where the newsletter comes in, so that you're still on their horizon. picking up new business is also very important. So that's where our sort of open days come in. We've got, like, as an annual show that happens here every year, and we're able to open the doors, and the landlord to the site sells quite a lot of tickets to that. So it's a good way for people to come and see us in our house and feel part of that. And just, you know, keeping off on our socials. You know, we're constantly trying to, you know, photograph and video and reel and just show people what we're up to and what we're doing and talk about it.
Yeah. And how far do people travel for sort of more routine servicing? I mean, I can imagine somebody could come from anywhere or abroad for a specialist rebuild, but on their more routine work,
more routine work. I think, you know, we get people coming from London. We still get people traveling. I've got 2 or 3 customers that travel over from France, come and stay. People from Scotland.
Yeah.
In our old site, we used to have a map with pin dots on it where we had sent engines. We used to rebuild quite a lot of engines, and at that point we were sending them all over the world, and you could see all these pin dots where they come from. So I think when we have open days and customers come in and talk to us, you'll sometimes talk to people and they've already got a specialist that they're working with, and they always feel like they don't want to tell you that. And I've always said to people, work with people that you get a good relationship and you trust. It's not about, you know, people necessarily having to come here. Just form a relationship with someone, and if you get on with those people and there's a trust relationship, it makes it so much easier. And that's something that I'm really big on the team here doing. Is, you know, it's fine to follow up with an email or send some information across, but actually talking in person or picking up the phone to somebody is key.
Absolutely. Okay, tell us one thing about obviously, I think you've got a bit of a motorsport background. Tell us how sort of motorsport fits into your life, both from a business point of view and for you personally.
So obviously the business was born and bred on it. My business partner has come from a sort of motorsport background. His father used to race. He's raced. He's done lots of stuff. He's raced in FIA, British ETs. He's also passed that bug on to me. So we occasionally go and compete in the little Citroen C1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they do endurance events. So we do the annual 24-hour race in those cars. But essentially, motorsport is, it's where every piece of machinery is, every ounce that there is in that car is used.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of things are developed in motorsport and then translated down into the automotive industry. So I think, everybody loves working on motorsport cars and the arena that they operate in.
Excellent. Okay, so look, I'd like to. We've got a flavour for the whole story, but let's talk about the future a little bit. Yeah, how do you see, Autofarm developing over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of changes in vehicle types, whether that's going to have a big impact for you, and just how you see that future and the things you're sort of keeping a watching brief on, even if you're not actually necessarily acting on them at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite fortunate because I think we've got multi-streams in the business. So we've got our service inside the project side. We do vehicle storage and a little bit of sales. So that keeps the business quite diverse. So I'm always looking to, is one area need more focus than the other? Definitely at this moment in time, I'd say like sales has got quieter. People are still focused on storing investment cars. For us, we've grown the service side, which has been instrumental really in being able to cater for the cars that come in through servicing. But for us, I think we're going to be looking at, developing our car storage side along with our sales side. As well as, we have invested in EV.
Yeah.
So we've got guys that are trained to be able to work on the mechanical side of high voltage vehicles. We haven't pushed ourselves to fully embrace in the EV side of the electric vehicles. I would suggest at this stage, most of the people that have got those cars, we still steer them towards the main dealer, because that's where they're going to still be able to get all their warranty work done. But I think if the requirement's there and we get asked enough, then it's an area of the business that we would push on. But I'm always a believer of not necessarily being, because we've got an established business, I wouldn't want to just all of a sudden take the business and turn it in a different direction. But always got to keep your eye on the horizon there.
Absolutely. What about things like sort of other alternative fuels, synthetic fuels? I mean, I know they're not big at the moment, but in the motorsport arena, they seem to be sort of starting to be known about and tested. Is that something that could impact your business in the longer term?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things changing at the moment. I mean, with all the stuff going on with oil, it's all quite challenging. But alternative fuels, definitely, synthetic fuels. All this, the hydrogen fuel cell stuff that's building in the background. I think, EV is definitely has its place, and I think that will always have a place as a supplementary to an engine, be it or an alternative fuel cell. But for classic cars, I can see synthetic fuel is going to be a way of prolonging that life of those vehicles moving forward, and for us all to still be able to use petrol cars.
Excellent. So I like that idea. It's sort of being aware of what's happening and what's coming along, because obviously motorsport, as you said, is sort of so leading edge. What you might see in a race car today, you'll probably see in some form in a regular road car in 4 or 5 years' time. But you're not chasing every fad. I think that's a very sensible way about looking forward. Okay, is there, in terms of that business from your point of view, how do people find out a bit more about you? Because there might be some people. Do you welcome in on your open days? Is it just for people you're likely to sell to, or could it just be for somebody who's an enthusiast but hasn't necessarily got a Porsche? I mean, tell us a little bit about the open days, or how generally people might find out more about Autofarm.
So there's various avenues of way people will stumble across us. The one I'm really focused on is personal recommendation. Yeah. If you look after somebody and they're happy to recommend you, that is gold dust. Equally, when we have our open days, if we've got people coming around, sometimes you're talking to somebody that's, that might own, £750,000 car, or might own a £3,500 Boxster. Yeah. For me and the guys here, because we're all passionate about what we do, it's not about what they own and how much it's worth. It's about the fact that they're on their journey, and if we can help them along that way, that's really important. But equally, I've got 3 kids myself, so it's lovely when on the open days you've got youngsters, small kids coming in and sitting in some of the cars. And there was an advert that Porsche did a good few years ago about a small child that went into a delership and was looked after and said, "I'll buy one of these when I'm older." And he went back to that dealership and did it.
I remember it, yeah.
And I think there's something really nice about that seed that you plant at that point in their life. At some point they'll come back to it. And it's interesting. I talk to people at open days and I hear people talk about Autofarm and say, "I remember when that was at Tring in 1975, and I would walk down and see all the cars, and that inspired me to buy the 911 that I have now."
Interesting. No, that is really really interesting. And so, sort of final general question, and sort of following on for that theme of inspiring youngsters, not necessarily to buy Porsches. What about sort of do you take on apprentices? How do you recruit people into the business?
So we're lucky because we've got Bicester Heritage local to us, and we're all quite well connected. So we've got 2 apprentices on at the moment. They're about to finish. And they've been on the Heritage Skills Academy. So yes, I think it's really important. You've got to have the right individual. You've got to have the right individual that wants to learn, wants to push themselves out of their comfort zone. And the knowledge sometimes isn't always just in paperwork and in manuals, it's in people's heads. And getting that translated and transferred down through the generations is really important. So I'm always keen to I started as an apprentice, and I found I probably learned more working parrot fashion from somebody else than I probably did learning from a manual.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, look, thanks for that, Mike. That's a sort of a tour de force about the whole history of a fabulous business that's been going over 50 years now. So we talked about the heritage of the business, a management buyout, the balance of the business, roughly 50-50 between service orientated, but also some very exciting projects, moving into video enabled service and how that builds customer trust, and a sort of I guess for a measured view of the future, not necessarily sort of making giant leaps, but being very aware of what's going on. Autofarm.co.uk is the website. As you say, there's quite a lot of video material out there on YouTube as well. So look, please, I'd say to everybody, have a look at those videos and be aware of the open days coming up. Have you got a date for the next one?
That's the big one that happens is coming up in. So I'm just looking at the calendar. Is on the 1st and 2nd of August, and it's the event is called Megaphonics.
Okay, excellent. We'll look out for that on the 1st, 2nd of August. And obviously, I encourage people to listen, share, and subscribe to the Oxford Business Insight podcast to make sure this gets as much coverage as possible, and hopefully some new followers for Autofarm as well. And so, look, we're talking about a specialist business that win when they combine sort of craftsmanship, trust with customers, and commercial discipline. And they don't necessarily chase every new fashion, but are aware of what's going on. Mikey, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, it's been great to chat.